Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I want to talk to you about the differences between the psychological theories of Carl Gustav Jung and Sigmund Freud. Alright, so I got this topic as a request and I think it's a really good topic. Both of these frameworks are pretty great for understanding some basic things about human nature. That said, I do tend to like Carl Jung's theories better, and I'll be talking a lot more about Carl Jung in the future. I just think that his stuff is more all-encompassing and it just is a bit more interesting to me, just in terms of it being a way of looking at dream symbols and the human personality. So before I go into the differences between these two psychologists, I want to cover some of the similarities between them. Alright, so Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud both subscribe to the idea that there's a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind is basically where we store all of our repressed traits, and that they kind of agreed on, even though Jung believed that we also store ancestral memory, but we'll go into that difference later. They believe that the unconscious is basically where we kept everything that we were not having in our conscious mind. And whenever we dream, that's when these symbols can come out in order for us to realize them in a context like dreams, where we might be able to interface with them better than in waking life, when it might be not as appropriate for those things to come about. And so that's basically the similarities between them. And actually, Carl Jung was working under Sigmund Freud when he first started out in the field of psychology. And then he ended up splintering off because of some other things that he disagreed with about Sigmund Freud's view on psychology. Sigmund Freud believed that the unconscious was basically a storage shed for all of our physiological instincts that we can't bring out in daily life, primarily the sexual instinct. And so whenever dream symbols come up or troubling dreams happen, it's as a result of repression of those baser drives. And they're essentially wish fulfillments that we can't otherwise have fulfilled in waking life. And so he kind of brought everything back to the sexual libidinal perspective, with a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, he believed that because we repress our sexuality, we weren't able to meet particular milestones. And if you didn't get past those particular things, it would cause neuroses for you in life. And so dreams essentially happened so that you could have a chance of actually hitting those particular developmental milestones. I do tend to go more on the side of Carl Jung's perspective. And he basically said the unconscious isn't just a basic storage shed for all of our baser instincts. Our unconscious contains the personal unconscious, where we keep all of our repressed traits stored away, but then we also have a connection to the collective unconscious, which is basically all of the things repressed by our society at large and by humanity at large. And so we're able to access symbols that are instinctual to us that way, and these are called archetypes, and these are symbols that can come up in dreams that have a numinous significance, or a significance that is shared throughout other cultures, even if you've never seen the symbol before. And so, as opposed to thinking of things in terms of wish fulfillments, Carl Jung thinks of this reintegration process in a way that's a bit more numinous, and it's about getting in touch with the true self, our real existential nature, which is deeply connected to everything that is. So that connection to the real self is what was the main driving force behind all of the dream symbols coming up, so that we can reintegrate those things. From there, I'll kind of go into some other basic differences between the two of their theories. Alright, so number one, Freud basically believed that dream symbols came up primarily so that we could hit those developmental milestones that I talked about earlier in the video. Jung, however, believed that it was for individuation, where you become like this unique separate person in the first part of life, but then eventually ego transcendence, where you're eventually moving past that and merging with something beyond yourself. All right, number two, Freud believed that neuroses were primarily caused by clashing instincts. So our sexual instinct clashed with our ability to get on in society, and the dream was meant as a kind of backdoor so you could actually get those needs met that you couldn't otherwise do. However, Jung thought that neuroses came from the repression of all of those traits that you consider not yourself. So you have an unacceptable trait that comes up, and then you repress it down and it becomes part of your shadow and gains autonomous control over the personality, and that's when a neuroses comes up. All right, number 3, Freud believed that repressions mostly came from childhood trauma, whereas Jung believed that even though childhood trauma, of course, is a major area where people repress things, that repressions can happen throughout life, and it's whatever the ego doesn't want to have be associated with self becomes a repression. All right, another difference between Freud and Jung is that Freud basically believed that dreams, when they weren't supposed to be giving you this other information, they were there primarily to keep you asleep longer. But Jung believed that dreams are actually there for an important reason all the way through, so that you can start to reintegrate those traits that you've been repressing. Another thing that I mentioned before is that Freud believed only in a personal unconscious, whereas Jung believed in a collective unconscious. When it came to dream symbols, Freud believed that the dream symbols are going to relate only to the person and their individual meaning that they place upon things, whereas Jung believed that it was going to be a mixture of individual meanings picked up from daily life, but also that those archetypal images would come up in the dreams, even if the person had not experienced those archetypal images before. Another thing that Freud believed was that basically dreams are a continuation of the things that you were talking about and thinking about in daily life, and that your actual position in the bed and that the actual physiological things happening in your body have an impact on the dreams you're having. So for example, if you're sleeping wrong on your side, you might have a dream that somebody stabs you in the side because you feel that sensation. Jung, on the other hand, believed that dreams always came up to integrate and didn't necessarily need to be connected to daily life. Another big difference between Freud and Jung is that Freud didn't believe in parapsychology at all, and he basically took a hardline scientific standpoint on the purpose for dreams. He thought that their purpose was physiological only, whereas Jung believed that dreams were kind of a go-between between this world that we're living now and that other world that we maybe don't have access to, where we're experiencing the existential self. So those are some basic similarities and differences between Freud and Jung. I hope that this was helpful and informative for you. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click the like button below and go ahead and subscribe. If you're interested in any topics such as psychology, particularly Jungian psychology, I plan to cover a lot more on that topic in the future. Also spirituality, enlightenment, alchemy, all those types of things that are just, relating to like sort of like the underground, sort of below the skin human experience. If you're interested in that type of thing, you'll definitely want to subscribe to this channel because it'll be right up your alley. But other than that, that's all I have for you today, and until next time, keep becoming more you.